Now, how do we move from our three-dimensional limited understanding of space and time to this fourth dimension where there is no space and time? We have to stop imagining the fourth dimension. We have to stop putting it structurally, because all structures belong to three-dimensional world. Even if you were to create the most complex structure using all your mathematical skills, still that would not be a representation of the fourth dimension. We have a word that can perfectly describe the fourth dimension. It is called the mind. Fourth dimension, because on its every point it can hold infinite number of worlds, it is simply a potentiality that can generate worlds without any limitation of space and time. The only thing that we are familiar with that can do this is the mind. Again, mind and brain are not the same thing. I'm not talking about the brain. I'm talking about the mind. When you sit and close your eyes, there is a world inside where images are being created. Experiences are being created. But there is no space there. You have closed your eyes. You're not looking outward. All our space is outward. And whatever space that is inside, what we regard as inside the body, we know exactly what is occupying that space. We know the physical body is not empty and hollow. Every part of the body is occupied by some matter, some physical thing. Now, where are you generating these thoughts? You can create a world in your mind. You can create as many worlds as you want without any space. And we also know without any time. How much time does it take to go from one end of your world in your mind to the other end? You can go from one edge of your world, of your universe in your mind, to the other edge in no time, breaking all rules of physics, breaking all laws of physics. For now, we can simply assume that there is something that we are familiar with that can be used to understand this fourth dimension. We cannot imagine it, but because if the fourth dimension is real, we should also be, there should be some part of us belonging to the fourth dimension. We can try and look for those signs where this fourth dimension operates. And one place where we can see this working is in the mind. No limitation of space, no limitation of time. Now, when you truly understand what this fourth dimensional space represents, every point capable of holding infinite number of worlds, it simply means it is not a space, but it can create space. And because 2 points on this fourth dimensional entity are not separated by distance, because there is no space, both the points are one and the same. Which means in the fourth dimension, each point is experiencing itself as a totality. Now, let me repeat that again. Each point, each imaginary point is a totality. Now, what happens when there is just one thing and nothing is obstructing its experience of itself? We get consciousness. Never before has this been said. In my understanding of things, it is the most significant thing. It is the profoundest of things ever uttered by a human being. Consciousness is the fourth dimension. It is everywhere at all times. It is a totality. It is a singularity. It is a completion that is experiencing itself. Consciousness is not biological. It is a higher dimension geometry, higher dimension physics. It is because we could not make this leap. All our imaginations of higher dimensions have been completely limiting. In fact, we talk about many dimensions. We talk about 5 dimensions, 6 dimensions. In string theory, we talk about 10 dimensions. 10 dimensions curled up inside the space. That right there tells me that we are missing something very fundamental about what a dimension is. You cannot curl up dimensions on a smaller scale and not on a larger scale. That contradicts the very rule of dimension. A dimension means it is a totality. Fourth dimensional entity would be 4-dimensional on every scale. But the problem is our own imagination. The problem is we are the ones investigating into the nature of reality. We simply don't know how to move from our 3-dimensional perceptual world to an abstraction like the 4th dimension. Now, it is a mathematical entity. Because there is no space, there is no time, because it's a higher dimension, it creates space and time. So that means it's obvious that it is not limited by space and time. When something is not limited by space and time, the whole scenario changes. Now, each point has nothing stopping it from being all other points because there's no space separation. That is where we get singularity. Singularity is a point that is a totality. Now, what we missed in our concepts of singularity, we use the word singularity. It is there in our scientific terminologies. We describe it as a place where all our known physics and mathematics breaks down. We talk in terms of space-time is curled up, is twisted in such a way that all our mathematical concepts leads to pure abstractions, pure infinity. We cannot even understand singularity. Nothing can come out of singularity. Nothing can be added to it. Conceptually, it is there. But if we truly understand singularity, it is a higher dimensional space. Now, why you are perceiving it as a singularity? It's because our perceptual world cannot grasp it. That is the only reason. Fourth dimension, because 2 points are not separated by distance, anywhere and everywhere, it is a totality. Now, it is a fundamental property of totality to know itself. It is not an additional thing added to this higher dimension. Consciousness is the existential signature of the 4th dimension. Just like everything in existence has to leave its existential signature, even the absence of something leaves its existential signature. We should be able to recognize it. A 0-dimensional point in a 0-dimensional world has an existential signature. Nothingness. That is its existential signature. A 1-dimensional world has a line as its existential signature. A two-dimensional world has a plane as its existential signature. A three-dimensional world has space as its existential signature. Now, what is the existential signature of this fourth dimension, which is outside of space and time? If you actually think about it, both zero-dimensional point in zero-dimensional world and this fourth dimensional entity are outside of space and time. And yet, they are two completely different entities. One is nothing, the other one is everything. When nothing leaves an existential signature of nothing, everything leaves its existential signature as presence, as a being, as consciousness itself. We have to altogether redefine these words. We have completely mistaken and confused words living, being, consciousness, aliveness, because of our closeness, the closeness of our bodies, the closeness of our minds to this pure entity. It is said that the hardest thing to see is something closest to you. You will come to it last. First, you will perceive everything outside of you. And then you will come to that entity that is universal, that is total. It is not a surprise that we are coming to consciousness so late, because it is closest to us. We had simply assumed that it is just a biological property. It is just being generated in the brain. We never made an attempt to understand consciousness as a higher dimensional space. Consciousness belongs to physics, not biology. Now, this changes everything. This changes our entire universe. This says we are in a living universe. A living universe. Every three-dimensional object that is moving on its own is extended into the fourth dimension in ways we cannot even comprehend. Objects that move in space, that we simply regard as just celestial objects, stars, planets. If consciousness is the ultimate reality, then these are all simply altered states of consciousness. If fourth dimension is real, then it will be the only thing real. Our three-dimensional world will simply be a shadow. In fact, it is. We can precisely understand how this happens. We can precisely understand how our three-dimensional world is created as a projection of this fourth dimension.